Crisis in U.S.-Ukraine relations. President Trump now suspends all U.S. military aid to Ukraine. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, we are now at a clear crisis inflection point in the relations between the United States and Ukraine, and maybe now in the future direction of the war itself between Ukraine and Mother Russia. So here is now the absolute latest. It hit yesterday like an absolute bombshell. President Trump, sick and tired now of the constant obstruction, defiance, frankly, obnoxiousness and arrogance of Volodymyr Zelensky, after meeting with his national security team, and according to multiple media reports, every single member of his national security team, from Vice President J.D. Vance to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, all of them said, Mr. President, it's time to cut off, pause, suspend all, and I mean all, military aid to Ukraine. Not just future sales or future assistance to Ukraine, literally current weapons shipments on their way to the battlefront, to the battlefield, are now being turned back and sent back to the United States. So now Trump has cut off Zelensky militarily at the knees. He has now made it very clear that Ukraine no longer has the military backing of the United States. And what finally triggered this move on the part of Trump, essentially now diplomatically going nuclear on Zelensky, was Zelensky gave an interview to Bloomberg, to the Financial Times in London, to the British media, shooting his mouth off again. This time, he said that peace with Russia, an end to the war, is, quote, very, very far away. In other words, we're not talking ceasefire today, tomorrow, next week, next month, maybe a year or two from now. President Trump, enraged, and I don't blame him. I absolutely don't blame him. Responded on Truth Social with fire and fury, saying this is the worst statement Zelensky could possibly make at this critical, fragile time when we are trying to put together a peace deal, a ceasefire, and an end to the war. What Zelensky did was to try to blow up the peace deal before we could even get it off the ground. And as Trump warned on Truth Social, I'm not going to put up with this for much longer. Listen now to President Trump. Another mini press conference at the White House, and the media now is jumping all over the Democrat talking points that because Trump wants to end the slaughter, the World War I style trench warfare, the bloodshed, the destruction, the death in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, that somehow he is Putin's puppet. Listen now to Trump as he deals with the reporter saying, well, you know, the Russians love this idea of a peace deal. So what do you say to people that Russia and the United States are on the same line in terms of foreign policy? Wink, wink. Aren't you really just doing Putin's bidding? Listen now to Trump's response. Roll cut 1, Mike.
Russia says that your administration's foreign policy is, quote, largely in line with their vision.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it takes two to tango, and you're going to have to make a deal with Russia, and you're going to have to make a deal with Ukraine. You're going to have the assent, and you're going to have the consent from the European nations, because I think that's important, and from us. I think everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It could be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long. Because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else.
Oh, he's completely right. He's absolutely right. Obviously, he's referring to Zelensky, midget man. He's referring to midget man. And he's saying, look, I'm not going to let one man destroy the possibility for peace and end the worst fighting, the bloodiest fighting in Europe, the worst war in Europe since the end of World War II. And I'm not going to allow this guy to stand there and destroy peace and a peace agreement. It's clear now. It is very obvious. Zelensky wants the war to continue. The Democrats want the war to continue. The media wants the war to continue. But the Ukrainian people are exhausted. Their army is breaking. The Russian people are exhausted. Putin wants to cut a deal. Trump wants to cut a deal. There's only one man now that stands in the path of peace, and that's Midget Man. Now, let me just say this, because I want to take calls on the other side if we load up the line. So call now, 617-266-6868. This is now a watershed moment. It is a turning point. Do you support Trump's decision to have suspended, essentially now temporarily cut off, all U.S. military aid and assistance to Ukraine? Ukraine now is going to be weakened on the battlefield. There's no question. They're not going to have access to some of the most sophisticated weapons that they've been relying on to inflict damage on the Russian army. Their air defense systems largely now is dependent upon us. Ballistic surface-to-surface missiles that have been pounding Russian positions, especially far behind the front lines. You can go right down the list. So the Ukrainians now have been relying on a lot of our equipment, a lot of our training, a lot of our advisors, and that's what's kept that country afloat and able to stand toe-to-toe with Russia. You pull the military plug, and Zelensky now has only the Europeans. And I'm telling you, the Europeans are not going to make up the difference. They can't make up the difference. Zelensky must resign. I understand Trump is desperately trying to have a peace agreement. He wants the slaughter and the killing to end. But in this, it does take two to tango. Russia is willing to go to the peace table. Zelensky isn't. And that's why I think at this point, there's no question, Zelensky now must step down. There must be elections held in Ukraine, which, by the way, Zelensky would lose. Forget these bogus polls that are controlled by the Zelensky regime that the media keeps citing. Oh, he's so popular in Ukraine. Yeah, those are his own government's polls. The Economist did it's a British magazine, very respected in Europe. They did an independent poll, their own poll. A military general who's very popular in Ukraine that Zelensky demoted and basically fired, Zaluzhny, destroys Midget Man 70-30 in any election with Zaluzhny challenging Zelensky. So this idea that Zelensky would win an election, yeah, that's only media propaganda. Zelensky would get his head handed to him in any election. Zelensky's problem now is he cannot leave power because he knows how much money he and his cronies have stolen. They have to keep the money laundering operation going. He understands that his power depends upon this war and upon the fact that he has declared martial law in his country, suspending the elections in Ukraine. He understands fully that once this war is over, Zelensky will get the boot. He may actually have to go to court. He may go to jail for all the money that he has embezzled and stolen from the Ukrainian people. And all of the crimes of his regime are going to be exposed, such as the bioweapons labs, such as the assassination of many of his political opponents, such as the jailing of opposition parties and political leaders. Remember, many of those that he put in jail may come back to power in elections. So they will want revenge upon Zelensky. So Zelensky realizes his only way to hang on is to keep this war going another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Keep this thing going. Keep this meat grinder going. And how many hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian young boys have to die? How many more civilians have to die? How much more of Ukraine gets destroyed? He doesn't give a damn. Trump is now saying no more. Your calls next. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, sending shockwaves now, not just across the United States, obviously, but across Europe and across the entire world. President Trump now has made one of the biggest decisions of his young presidency. He decided, with the full backing and agreement, the assent of his entire national security team, to suspend, pause, cut off, at least temporarily, all U.S. military aid to Ukraine. That even includes weapons in transit, weapons that were on their way to be sent to Ukraine to go onto the battlefield. He now has pulled them all back. Zelensky now is trying to call a meeting of his government in Ukraine. And the question now is, how long can the Ukrainians continue to fight on? Will Europe now step in and back Ukraine in its war with Russia? And did Trump just hand Putin a major victory? Listen now to Trump at the press conference saying, you want to know why I'm driving this peace deal hard? It's simple. One reason above all. Roll cut 3B, Mike.
I want one thing to happen. I want all of those young people to stop being killed. They're being killed by the thousands every single week. Last week, 2,700 were killed. 2,700 young, in this case, just about all young boys from Ukraine and from Russia. And that's not young people from the United States, but it's on a human basis. I want to see it stop. The money is one thing, but the death. And they're losing thousands of soldiers a week. And that's not including the people that get killed every time a town goes down or a missile goes into a town. And I want to see it stop.
I'm with Trump on this. Not 100, 1,000%. 1,000%. And midget man Zelensky has only himself to blame. As I said on X last night, and I want to repeat it, his refusal to support a ceasefire, his open disrespect and contempt for Trump, for J.D. Vance, and for the American people. The fact that he is clearly now a puppet of the globalist warmongers who want the bloodshed, the death, and the destruction to continue has, to me, now made him a source of absolute shame for the Ukrainians and, frankly, for anyone who values and champions peace. Now, Zelensky has a big decision to make. He can continue to fight on, and that's his prerogative. If he wants to fight this endless war, let me tell you, he can fight on. But he's going to do it now without a single American red cent, without a single American bullet, and without a single American boot on the ground. And Ukraine, if the Europeans want to back him, that's up to them. If Keir Starmer, that woke prime minister of Britain, that little, that woke idiot, or Macron, if the Europeans want to go toe to toe with the Russians and continue the bloodshed and the death and the killing, Go ahead. It's their right. It's their continent. It's on their border. It's in their neighborhood. But the United States is done. Either we get a peace deal or we're washing our hands of Ukraine. Now, I'm telling you, and you can hold me to this, Ukraine cannot win this war. This is senseless. This is like World War I now, where you're just throwing bodies after bodies after bodies after bodies. And so, what are the Ukrainians fighting for? Just at this point of the war, it is now essentially a stalemate. As I said, it's trench warfare. We're fighting for a couple hundred yards here, a couple hundred yards there, a town here, a town there, and it's slaughter everywhere. Dead bodies everywhere. So, we're going to risk World War III. We're going to sacrifice the lives of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian and Russian troops, and God knows how many more civilians, men, women, and children, for a couple of square miles in a part of Ukraine that we're all very clear, this is on the eastern side of Ukraine, that is historically been ethnically Russian, Russian-speaking, and part of the Tsarist Empire going back 1,000 years. Basically, borderlands. That's what they're fighting over. Borderlands. This is insanity. This is madness. Frankly, this is obscene. It's abhorrent. And Trump is the only peacemaker who wants to end all of this before it escalates to World War III. It's time now to see what Zelensky can do on his own. He wants to do his tough guy routine. He wants to stand there with his little military fatigues or his black pants and his sweatshirt with the Ukrainian blue and white trident. Okay, Mr. Tough Guy, you want to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood? It's now going to be on your hands. Zelensky brought this upon himself. He is directly responsible now for what happens from this point forward. And I'm telling you, and then I want to take calls on the other side. 617-266-6868. Couple lines are open if you want to jump on. I am telling you right now, if Zelensky doesn't take the deal now, if he waits 3 months, if he waits 6 months, it's not just going to be more Ukrainians dead. Russia is going to gobble up more territory, and Zelensky and Ukraine will even get a worse deal then than they're going to get now. If I'm Zelensky, sign a peace deal. If you can't, resign. But this, my friends, is not going to end well for Ukraine. Bulldozer 617-266-6868. Lines are jammed. Okay, let me ask you. It is the question of the day. There's no question about it. Last night, in fact, I think yesterday afternoon, to be exact, President Trump made the very dramatic announcement. He is now pausing, suspending, cutting off all U.S. military aid to Ukraine. Ukraine now is, for the most part, some help from Europeans, but for the most part, Zelensky and Ukraine are now on their own. Do you agree or not agree with Trump's decision? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Russ in Boston, you're going to kick us off, Russ. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Donald Trump in a non-sexual way. God live Donald Trump and Trumpism. Okay. First of all, Jeff, after this war is over, the Ukrainian people should hang Zelensky upside down like the Italians did to Mussolini, because that's what he deserves. This war was caused by the Democratic Party, creating hate with Russia, and the idiot European leaders who wanted Ukraine to become part of NATO. They did this. They caused this. President Trump must force this war to an end, including forcing Europe warmongers to end this war. Now, in World War II, all Allied forces were under United States command. To this day, all NATO forces are under United States command. Tell the European leaders, if we leave NATO, you do not trust one another to be under the command of the others, okay? Especially Britain, Germany, and France, because they don't trust one another to be under any one of them's command, okay? So the net result of this is down the road, the Europeans would be back to killing themselves as they did for centuries. And the only reason why they stopped killing themselves is because we intervened and we domesticated them just like you would domesticate a bunch of animals. And always remember this. The United States of America was formed because of those SOBs in Europe. The people that came to this country were tired of killing each other, okay? And that's why they forged this great country. And we must never forget that, okay? And I'm telling you right now, these European bastards, Jeff, and I have to put it this way, as a Vietnam vet and as a NATO tripwire soldier, okay? That's what I was when I was in Germany, okay? After all these years, they still depend on Big Brother for their survival. They go ahead and they saber rattle against the Russians, knowing that they can't defend themselves without the United States of America. Screw them. I've had enough of Europe. And Jeff, I'll remind you, both you and I are of European descent, and screw them.
Russ, honestly, drop the mic. What a way to start the show. Russ, thank you very much for that call. I really, really appreciate it. No, look, this is what's going on, and I think it's disgusting. Look, this is the big development since that blow up on Friday between Zelensky and Trump, is that the Europeans are rallying around Zelensky. And what I mean by the Europeans, European governments, okay, especially the British and the French and the Germans. Those are the big three. They're rallying around the Ukraine, and they're rallying around Zelensky. Now, I want you to just think about this. You know, as Russ rightly said, who saved Europe in World War I? We did. Who saved Europe in World War II? We did. Who saved Europe during the Cold War? We did. For 100 years, it has been American blood and American treasure that has bailed Europe's chestnuts out of the fire again and again and again. And you allow this con man and this grifter, this midget man, after we've given him $200 billion of our taxpayer money, okay? And all the weapons that has kept his entire country afloat over the last 3 years of war. And your stand with him as he disrespects the United States and Trump and the American people and taxpayers, and you side with him? Screw you, as Russ would say. Screw. I'm done. Look, I'm going to go even further, and this may be a topic for another day. Look, and, you know, it's up to Trump. I'm not going to make a big deal if he doesn't do it. I would go to the Europeans and say, you know what? I'm sick and tired of this. You guys have been freeloading off of our back now for how many decades? We always have to fight your wars. And we've been carrying Ukraine, let's be clear, for the last 3 years. And now when we finally say, let's end the slaughter, or you Europeans have to start doing your fair share, all of a sudden, we're the bad guys? All of a sudden, you turn your backs on us? All of a sudden now, you side with this globalist puppet, this disgusting ingrate and crook and warmonger Zelensky over us? After everything we've done for you, we're walking out of NATO. Bye. Bye. We're leaving NATO. We're done. You guys you police your own continent. You guys deal with each other. We've put 100 years behind you. And this is the thanks that we get? So, to be honest, I'm telling you, I can't stand the EU, and I'm really now beginning to resent NATO. And what's going, and what Russ said is 1,000%, not 100, 1,000% clear. Correct. Forgive me. He's 1,000% correct. It's crystal clear now. The Europeans and Zelensky want us to fight their war against Putin. They're trying to manipulate us, rope us, play us into going in to give Ukraine a full ironclad security guarantee so that it's going to be American troops fighting Russian troops over the Donbass. And I'm telling you, if American troops start fighting Russian troops, that's World War III. Now, they won't send their boys to die, the Europeans. They won't send their people to die because they think, aha, Uncle Sucker will bail us out like he's done in World War I, like he did in World War II, like he did during the Cold War, like he did during the Balkans of the 1990s. It's always Uncle Sam that rides to the rescue. No, we're not going to fight World War III over the Donbass. Ukraine is not worth the bones of a single American soldier. Now, instead of saying, thank you, let's cut a peace deal and salvage a peace with honor for Ukraine. And this is why Trump is looking at Zelensky like, are you got a screw loose, buddy? I'm going to save most of your country. And then America's going to help completely rebuild it. And we're going to make sure it's an enduring, secure, lasting peace. And you want us to continue this? Because of your irrational hatred for Vladimir Putin and Russia? No. We're done. Not a penny, not a bullet, and not one boot on the ground. Agree, disagree. Alex in Cambridge. Thanks for holding, Alex, and welcome.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the Democrats and the globalists that want us to get into World War III. And because Rush was so good, the gentleman before me was so good, and he was actually a word that I never heard. It's a tripwire, and that tells me he was out there. So it's the globalists, the Democrats, all of those people are the ones who want us to get into World War III. And my major concern before the election was that if Biden stuck around, we would be in World War III. Or we would just keep on piling money into this Ukraine pit.
Oh, Alex, I agree with you. In fact, look, what Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, he's a man of the radical left, like Macron is a globalist, a left-wing globalist. What Keir Starmer really is a junior Biden. That's what he is. Not as powerful because it's Britain. Britain's not as powerful as America. So what Keir Starmer is a junior Biden. What Macron is a junior Biden. So now that Trump defeated Biden and Harris, right? First Biden and then Harris. Well, they think, we can keep fomenting this war in Ukraine. And so, Alex, I don't know if you heard about this. Keir Starmer with Macron, they're opening their big mouths and saying the Brits and the French are going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. They're going to have their planes patrol the skies and shoot down Russian planes. And I'm like, okay, if you guys want to start World War III with Russia, be my guest. But we're out. Be the Z-Man right now. Let me just put it to you this way, Midget Man, Zelensky. Because I think he's getting an earful now from a lot of his fellow Ukrainians back in the old country. I don't think Ukrainians are happy with the fact now, obviously, that his behavior, his intransigence, frankly, his arrogance has now cost him everything with the United States. Trump now has cut off all U.S. military aid. Tonight, Trump will be addressing a joint session of Congress in which he will just talk to the American people and tell them specifically why he has decided to make this move. My question to you, do you agree with Trump or disagree? Paul in Rhode Island. Thanks for holding, Paul, and welcome.
Yes, Jeff. You think Biden might have started all this to begin with in the first place? Because if the war didn't start, then we wouldn't have this issue. Hello?
Yeah, you're completely right. Look, Biden bears full responsibility for what happened. He was told repeatedly by the Russians, and frankly, previous presidents, do not incorporate Ukraine into NATO. If you push NATO right through our soft underbelly, which is what Ukraine has historically always been, then we will not tolerate nuclear missiles that can reach Moscow or St. Petersburg in 5 to 7 minutes. That's a red line that we will not allow anyone to cross. And what did Zelensky do? Urged on by Biden, egged on by Biden, in November of 2021, these idiots said, we're now asking Ukraine to formally apply for membership in NATO. And Putin then even came out and said, you've just crossed the red line. Don't do it. There's going to be massive consequences. He even said it, military consequences. And Biden basically laughed in his face. And February of 2022 is when they decided, fine, we're going to move. We told you in November, we told you in December, we told you in January, we're not going to allow this, we're making our move. So yes, technically Russia invaded Ukraine, there's no question. But this is why Trump keeps saying over and over again, really, it was Biden and Ukraine that started the war. Because they did the one thing that would trigger a Russian military response. Now, Putin didn't care and doesn't care if Ukraine joins the European Union. They don't care if they're militarily neutral. They don't care if in many ways Ukrainians see their future as part of the West. But what he will not tolerate, and it's not just Putin, any Russian leader, any Russian opposition leader, it doesn't matter, left, right, center, no Russian leader will tolerate NATO on its doorstep with Moscow and St. Petersburg exposed like that. They will not do it, period. Just like we would never accept Russian missiles in Cuba, for example, during the Cold War, even today. If Putin or, let's say, Xi Jinping, if China put nuclear missiles right in Cuba that could reach Florida within a minute, that could reach Washington and New York and Boston within 5 minutes, and destroy the entire East Coast without us even being able to retaliate, give off a quick response. No president, unless it's Joe Biden or Kamala, but no sane American president would allow nuclear missiles in Cuba from either Russia or China or, frankly, any country. So what I don't understand, these liberals keep going on about, we got to support Ukraine, we got to support Ukraine. America has red lines. China has red lines. How come Russia can't have red lines? Europe has red lines. Australia has red lines. Most countries in the world have red lines. They go, there's certain things for our national security, we can't allow it to happen, period. So it was the warmongers, led by Biden, led by the Democrats, their puppet Zelensky, who ultimately bear responsibility for this war. And, Paul, think about it. Trump is the one who inherited the war. It didn't happen under his watch. It didn't happen during his first term. So he's inheriting a mess. And the guy that's trying to clean up the mess, the guy that's trying to end the killing and the bloodshed and the horror, he's the bad guy? They're insane. I'm telling you, Paul, they're insane. And that's why my answer to the Europeans is, hey, you guys want to fight the Russians? Go ahead. But this time, you're not going to do it with America. You're on your own. And let's see how long you can last on the battlefield against the Ruskies. Let's see. Paul, final word to you.
Biden wasn't in the White House from 2000 and from 2000 to 2020. When he left office for the last 4 years, we wouldn't be in such a mess. Honest, we wouldn't be in such a mess, and I blame at least partially Biden for all of this because he's plainly responsible. He kept pushing the envelope. They didn't want a war. They don't want a nuclear war, And I hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, Biden bears some responsibility.
No question. No question. And now the Europeans are going to bear responsibility. Starmer and Macron and the Chancellor of Germany and the Chancellor-elect of Germany, who just keep egging Zelensky on. And I think, look, this is now the problem. As I said yesterday on, yesterday's show, and Paul, thank you very much for that call. They've created a Frankenstein's monster. And let me just tell you, this has been reported now, not just by the New York Post, but by numerous other newspapers, both, for example, the Daily Telegraph in Britain, by the European papers. Zelensky's advisors, please all of you listen to this. Zelensky's advisors, these are people very close to Zelensky's inner circle, say that they believe now that something is wrong with Zelensky, that he has become, in his own mind, these are their words, not mine, a quasi-religious, almost messianic figure, that Zelensky believes that he was brought by God. God is speaking to Zelensky to defeat the Russians and to roll the Russians back all the way to the borders before 2014 and to defeat Russia so decisively that it would lead to the overthrow of the Putin regime. And that he's got almost like a messiah complex, that his arrogance, his pride, his hubris, his sense of himself is now boundless, that he cannot be reached, he cannot be reasoned with. Now, they're quoting his top advisors, okay, or we're talking on anonymity. This is what they're saying. We have nothing but bad options. The war is not going well. We have to forcibly conscript people to go to war. We're kidnapping young men in apartments, literally kidnapping them to force them to go to the front. Our infrastructure is breaking down. 13 million Ukrainian refugees have now fled the country. Hundreds of thousands are dead. Over 1 million are maimed, crippled, wounded. An entire generation of Ukrainian youth is gone. This is the best deal we're going to get. You can't reason with him. We're losing the war. And if the war goes on, we're going to lose it even more. And yet he believes he is the only one that can deliver a historic defeat against the Russian army and against Vladimir Putin. So what you're dealing with now is a man with a serious screw loose. And that was Trump and J.D. Vance's reaction on Friday. They're looking at him like, are you normal? That's why Trump kept saying, you don't have any cards. Like, what is wrong with you? You're talking about, you're thumping your chest and you're pounding your chest and we'll fight to the end and we'll fight the Russians and no ceasefire and we'll keep this war going. With what? Your army is literally breaking down. You're losing 2,000-3,000 men a week. As Trump said, you're running low on soldiers. Like, what? Do you want to lose everything to Putin? Are you normal? But that's what you're dealing with now. Because that's what the Europeans have created. They treat him like he's some kind of a rock star. And they did it again on Sunday. They did a big summit for him in London. All the European leaders showed up. They were fawning all over him. The great Zelensky, the brave Zelensky, the warrior Zelensky, the Churchill. They keep saying that, the Churchill of our time. So this idiot has now convinced himself, this clown, this comedian, okay, this midget man, literally has convinced himself he's the second coming of Churchill. And even if he stands alone, like Churchill stood alone against Hitler, he'll stand alone to the bitter end. He's going to get himself killed. He's going to get millions of Ukrainians killed. And I'm telling you, Russians are going to roll into Kiev and they're going to take over most of Ukraine if this guy's not careful. That's what Trump is trying to tell him. this war goes on for another year or two, you guys are going to lose everything. And then you're going to have to sue for peace and surrender. And as Trump's saying, I'm going to be much nicer to you than Vladimir Putin will ever be. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Moses in Long Island. Thanks for holding, Moses, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Moses.
Once again, man, you're crushing it. And your callers are always great, too, man. Just to jump right into it, Jeff, I just saw something to lighten the mood a little bit. Babylon Bee put out, and I actually think, a lot of times they actually have good ideas, even though it's supposed to be satire. Trump should institute a draft for anybody who puts a Ukrainian flag up and send them over to Ukraine. Isn't that a great idea?
That's a great idea. Like an American volunteer force of moonbats. If you guys all love Ukraine so much, I'll tell you what. We're going to give you all the gear, all the equipment, all the machine guns you want, and we'll even fly you in. And you guys can take on the Ruskies on the battlefront. Tell me, Moses, how many liberals you think would sign up for that war?
In one hand. But it's funny because I was scrolling down social media, and even you got all these political people that are, or Congress people that are sitting there and talking about, poor Ukraine, poor Ukraine. It's like, listen, what's stopping you from going over there and putting your life on the line? But Jeff, just to switch up real quick, and I want people to start getting in a positive mind frame about this. A lot of things are happening. This is, and I know some people don't like when I say, Trump's playing 4D chess, but this is just set up for a big time win right now. Russia came out and said that they're willing to do a mineral deal with us. Okay? Ukraine can sit there, kick around, and cry all they want, but they're gonna end up doing a mineral deal with us. They're not gonna have an option. Like you so well explained, they don't have anybody willing to fight for them anymore. You can see the videos. They're putting them up by the hundreds of them just pulling up to random young men, beating the hell out of them, and throwing them in a van and forcing them to the front line. The people of Ukraine, the men in Ukraine are scared to come out of their house. They're at a point right now where the women and the elderly are the ones going out to get the food and split it up in communities. You got the Prime Minister of Italy just said, nope, you're not sending our men over there. You can go fight this war, but not with us. You got Hungary blocking NATO, blocking the whole thing with NATO. You got China wishing that we would continue this because they're the winners out of this. What Zelensky's doing is going to be what he's trying to do would benefit China more than anything. We need these minerals. I'm really happy to hear that Russia is willing to start doing negotiating with us on that, because that's the whole tech industry that's blowing up. We need those minerals for that, and this is going to work out in our favor big time right now. And to be honest with you, I think this should all be wrapping up within the next day or two. A couple of people, Zelensky, what you said about his advisors, you're 100% right. He sounds crazy. He's saying that his behaviors are insane. Somebody caught him in England over there saying some crazy things, some curses towards Trump. The last thing I want to say too, which is really disappointing about England, and maybe you could tell me if it's 100% true. The whole thing that they made a deal with England behind our back,
yes,
and signed a 100-year deal.
Yes,
if that's true, I mean, for Christ's sake, how do you justify that if you're England? How do you justify that if you're Karma and all of them doing that behind our back?
They signed you're right. They signed a minerals deal, a secret minerals deal with Zelensky. So to give an incentive to the British, because Starmer is telling Zelensky, we'll send you missiles, we'll send you ammunition, we'll even send ground troops. We'll even send our fighter jets to patrol Ukraine skies. And Zelensky said, well, what's your price? And Starmer said, I want the minerals. And Zelensky said, you got it. So much for the special relationship. But that's Starmer. I told you, he's the Biden of Great Britain. And by the way, he's going to get destroyed in the next election. His popularity is near zero. So that's what I mean. They need a war in Ukraine because Macron is going to get wiped out and Starmer is going to get wiped out because they can't run their own countries. They've allowed their countries to be flooded with Muslim migrants. Literally, their countries are overrun with Muslim migrants. Inflation is soaring. The economy is tanking in both countries. They're both deeply, deeply unpopular. So that's why they think, well, if we get this war in Ukraine red hot again and put some British troops in there and some French troops in there, then that's going to distract public opinion. The people will rally around the flag, rally around us. So they think it's going to save them. It's not. It's not. And I agree with you. I think Trump is going to break Zelensky. And this is part of him breaking Zelensky. He's exposing him. Okay, tough guy. You want to be a tough guy? All right. No American military aid. Let's see how tough you are. And look, if I'm Vladimir Putin, I go all in now. I mean, I would tell his generals, call up every soldier. I mean, just throw everything we have at the front lines because the Ukrainians now are going to get smashed. We're going to roll Ukraine. And we're going to roll right across eastern Ukraine. So if I'm Zelensky, if he's smart, I get on the phone, I apologize. I'm sorry, Mr. President. I make mistake. I'm so sorry. It was the vodka. Mr. President, I drank too much vodka. It hit me in the head on empty stomach. I don't make sense. I'm so sorry. Okay? He either makes an apology and signs that mineral deal now, or I'm telling you, I think his political days are numbered. Moses, I'm telling you, I think most Ukrainians are just going to overthrow him. The Duma, the parliament, is just going to kick him out, saying, what are you, nuts? Without America, we can't win. Moses, thank you very, very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. So, no, I agree with Moses. I think in the end, Zelensky now has cut his own political throat. And the sad thing is many more are going to have to needlessly die. But hopefully he'll come to his senses in the next couple of days and sign a deal. 617-266-6868. Dave in Revere. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Dave.
Jeff, that whole situation with that meeting with Zelensky, the only thing that was missing in the meeting in the Oval Office was a 4-ring and a referee. Jeff, they should have had a referee with a four-ring boxing situation going on, and have a referee that calm things down.
Station 32 Vinyl Street. It is on your left.
Jeff, that whole thing was a mess. We shouldn't have given Zelensky anything. He's already gotten $30 billion out of us, and he figured he was going to just come and suck on Uncle Donald, the way I like to see it, because he's not that old as Uncle Sam was. But anyhow, he should have just said, see you later. He doesn't need nothing. He's got enough money out of us, Jeff. And then he goes to friggin' Europe, figuring he's got to get another $30 billion, the way the news was saying that Europe's going to give him another $30 billion and everything that he wants. And he's still going to cry over everything else? Jeff, we've given him enough money. And then he says he can't find it?
Well, Dave, I mean, that to me, that's the line that I think I'll never forget. And that's why Trump now has ordered Elon and Doge to track all the money we've given to Ukraine. When Zelensky came out and said that we have given Ukraine $177 billion in military and economic financial assistance, and that they only got $75 billion, and that there's $102 billion missing. Yeah, $100 billion, just to simplify it. $100 billion missing. It's gone. I don't know. It disappeared. I don't know. Remember that story about the Social Security checks? How people over 100 years old, 110, 120, 130, over 25 million were receiving these Social Security checks? Elon's Doge is now finding out that a lot of those checks, you know where they're going? Ukraine. I'm not saying all of them, but they're saying they're starting to find accounts, Social Security accounts in Ukraine. That's why Trump is saying we're getting ripped off left, right, and center. And that's it. I'm done. The American taxpayer is done. Either you sit down, come to the peace table, negotiate an end to this war, or you guys are on your own. And then let's see how you do without America backing you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Obviously on Ukraine and Trump's historic decision, there's no question about it, to suspend, pause, however you want to, no matter how you want to say it, temporarily cut off all U.S. military aid to Ukraine, even weapons that are in transit. And we'll see what the fallout will be. My suspicion is I think Zelensky will be signing a deal very soon, both for minerals and for some kind of a peace agreement. But we shall see. 617-266-6868. Now, what is the common theme of, really, he's going to be addressing a joint session of Congress tonight. What is Trump's theme throughout his presidency? It's still obviously a very young presidency, just barely a month old. That Trump will defend the American national interest. And it doesn't matter if it's at the border. It doesn't matter if it's in Ukraine. It doesn't matter if it's in Europe. It doesn't matter if it's regarding China. It doesn't matter if it means Greenland or the Panama Canal, or when it comes to trade. Trump will always put America and American national interests first. And this is leading the globalists to lose their collective minds. Today, according to the globalists, listen now to this, it is, in their view, what they're calling it D-Day, Doomsday. Why is it Doomsday? Because, as I speak to you now, Trump has now imposed 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods, 10% on energy imports, 25% on all other Canadian goods, 25% tariffs on all Mexican goods, and a further 10% tariff on all Chinese goods coming into the country. He already imposed 10. He's now going to add another 10. So in effect, a 20% tariff increase. Now remember, Trump has already raised tariffs on Chinese goods in the past. So he's adding tariffs upon tariffs when it comes to China. The Mexican government is melting down. The Chinese have launched now massive retaliatory tariffs on all American goods. But where the real yelling and screaming is taking place, I swear I'm not making this up, is from our neighbor to the north, my former homeland, Kanakistan, the Great White North, the People's Republic of Canada. The Canadians, and in particular the Canadian Liberal government led by Justin Trudeau, are going apoplectic. It is a complete collective meltdown that is taking place. Canada now is launching a massive retaliatory tariff, 25% on $155 billion worth of goods. So they are now retaliating against us. But it's not just that they're retaliating against us. The Canadians now, I swear to you, are saying that Trump's tariffs are a form, these are their words, a form of economic terrorism, an economic Pearl Harbor, and essentially a declaration of war. And the Canadians say that Trump is being unfair. He's being unilateral. This is an attack on Canada and Canada's economic security, that Trump is violating the USMCA, his own trade deal where he renegotiated NAFTA. And the Canadians now say they are looking now to detach themselves from the American partnership that they've historically had with our country. And they are now looking to sell their goods to Europe, to China, to other markets around the world, but that from this point forward, they see Trump's America as a mortal enemy of Canada. And they will now economically retaliate, and they are now going to treat Trump, listen to this, as a terrorist and a terrorist regime. They're losing their minds. They're losing their minds over a 25% tariff. Now, listen, physically the biggest province is Quebec. So the most populous province, the province with the most people is Ontario. The economic engine of Canada is Ontario. So the Premier of Ontario, basically another way of saying governor, Premier Ford, has now come out and said he is thinking about cutting off all hydroelectricity exports into the United States. In other words, he went on NBC and he says, we're going to cut off electricity to the United States. This is now a trade war, and the lights are going to start coming off, whether it be in upstate New York, whether it be in Michigan, whether it be in the Northeast, whether it be in New England. And if you do keep the power on, you're going to be paying a hell of a lot more for your utility bills. They now say this is an economic war to the finish. And Canada's former deputy prime minister, who now is running in the leadership race to succeed Justin Trudeau, has come out, I'm not kidding, with maybe the most ominous retaliation possible. What does she say she's going to do if she becomes the next prime minister? You got to hear it to believe it. Trust me. The wake of Trump imposing 25% tariffs on Canada, Mexico, a further 10% on China. And according now to the media, to the globalists, especially to the government in Canada, the left-wing, far left-wing government of Justin Trudeau, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Well, we're still here. It's not the end of the world, but not if you listen to the Canadians. So this is Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario. He went on NBC, and he now says they're going to cut off electricity to the United States. The lights are going to start going out all across upstate New York, Michigan, New England, the Northeast. Roll cut 17, Mike.
We are the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We buy over 3,600 products from 35 states. I talked to the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell. Don't touch our bourbon. I'm going after absolutely everything. And I don't want to. We keep the lights on, the 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S. And I'm telling you, we will do it. It's unfortunate. I would rather ship you more electricity, ship you more critical minerals. I want to ship you more energy, more potash to keep your farmers going, and uranium that you use for your nuclear power. It comes through from Saskatchewan over to Ontario, and it's going to be a massive, massive problem.
So, again, look at the hysteria. A 25% tariff is destroying Canada's economy? By the way, just so that you know, Canada, for most of its history, has had a massive tariff on the United States. And Americans have had tariffs on Canadian goods. This has only been the last couple of decades under quote-unquote free trade that they have lowered some tariffs for some goods. So they're acting like like this is some kind of, I don't know, economic warfare being waged against Canada. No, it's just a 25% tariff. That's it. That's all it is. But no, listen now to Doug Ford, tough guy, another tough guy. Okay, another Zelensky wannabe. So now he's saying not only is he going to target the United States and our electricity and turn the lights off, but he's going to go after Republicans and Republican-governed states, Republican-controlled states. And he says you're going to feel the pain, and you're going to feel it good, and you're going to feel it hard. Roll cut 17A, Mike.
And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you are ready, sir, to go to war, to go to a trade war with the United States, with the Trump administration.
It's the last thing we want to do. It's one person that's coming to attack us economically. Your closest friend, your treasured ally that will stand shoulder to shoulder with you in every situation you faced. And he's attacking the person, his number one customer. There's no country in the world that buys more products off the U.S. than we do. We're the number one trading customer to 28 states. And a lot of them are red states. They're going to feel the pain like they've never felt before.
So we're attacking them. Now they're going to feel we're going to feel the pain. Look, honestly, this is pathetic. I'm telling you right now, the Canadians are behaving absolutely pathetically. What they don't tell you, and this is what the Canadian media in particular has been systematically lying to Canadians, is how over the last several decades, I'm not talking 30, 40, 50 years ago, I'm not talking the retaliatory tariffs that now the Trudeau government has imposed on on American imports into the United States, into Canada, forgive me. Canada has been putting tariffs on American goods for decades. So they tariff our eggs, they tariff our dairy, they tariff, so many American products. Literally hundreds and hundreds of American products are tariffed by Canada and have been, as I said, for decades. No, I'm not talking again about the retaliatory tariffs. This is before the retaliatory tariffs that Trudeau has now imposed on American exports going into Canada. So they can, and by the way, many of these tariffs, 150%, 140%, not 25%, 150, 140, 117, 81%, 73%, 67%, 50%. So let me get this straight. Canada can tariff us, but we can't tariff them? Look, this is like a mob arrangement where you keep being extorted and extorted and extorted. And when you finally tell them, nah, this arrangement's not working for us. Nah, we want to revise this deal. Nah, we want this to be a little more fair and a little more reciprocal. And the mob starts yelling and screaming. That says, war. You have declared war. No, it's just a 25% tariff. We just want to level the trading playing field. That's all. Let's not turn this into something that it's not. But to show you how utterly insane the reaction now in Canada has become. Again, I'm telling you, they've lost their minds up there. This is former Deputy Prime Minister. So she was the number 2 in the Trudeau government. If something happened to Justin Trudeau, she would have been Prime Minister. She is now running to succeed him as the leader of the Liberal Party and then the Prime Minister. It's going to be between her and another candidate, Mark Carney. Basically, it's come down to these two fighting to replace Trudeau, and we're going to know the results in a matter of weeks. Now they want to acquire, Canada wants to acquire nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. So you're going to nuke us now over a 25% tariff? You want to nuke us over a dinky 25% tariff? Jeff, that's impossible. Jeff, no. There's no way she said that. You wouldn't believe me if I said it, so here it is. Chrystia Freeland, candidate to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, former Deputy Prime Minister. Roll cut, and by the way, a crazy moonbat. Roll cut 18, Mike.
The U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that. That's why I would start with our Nordic partners, specifically Denmark, which is also being threatened, and our European NATO allies. I would be sure that France and Britain were there, who possess nuclear weapons, and I would be working urgently with those partners to build a closer security relationship that guarantees our security in a time when the United States can be a
threat. So Canada now is going to work with Britain and France to acquire and possess nuclear weapons. And she's very likely, or not likely, she's one of the two candidates to possibly succeed Justin Trudeau. So you want to nuke up Canada? Now, Sandy asked me during the break, she said, I wasn't sure. So Canada has no nuclear weapons. I said no. In fact, Canada was the only great victor of World War II that never acquired nuclear weapons. They said, well, we didn't need to because we're protected by the Americans. That was their argument. France got a nuclear weapon. Britain got nuclear weapons. Obviously, the United States and Russia got nuclear weapons. Canada chose to have a nuclear bomb. Now, I want you to think about this to show you how crazy they've become up there. World War II and the aftermath wasn't enough to convince the Canadians to get the bomb. The entire Cold War with the Soviet Union wasn't enough to convince them to get the nuclear bomb. The rise of communist China in the 21st century and their infiltration of the Canadian government and of Canadian society and the Canadian economy is not enough to cause them to get the bomb. But a 25% tariff? And suddenly now they want to, in other words, Donald Trump now is causing them to want to get a nuclear bomb and to potentially nuke us. So you want to go to war over a 25% tariff? Pathetic. Honestly, pathetic. Hey, to the Canadians up there, this is not a hockey game. Stupid. This is real life. If I'm Donald Trump, here's my response. You guys think you want to get nukes? You want to call me an economic terrorist? You want to say this is a declaration of war? This just cost you another 25%. In other words, if I'm Trump, I don't lessen the trade war, I intensify the trade war.
The U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that. That's why I would start with our Nordic partners, specifically Denmark, which is also being threatened, and our European NATO allies. I would be sure that France and Britain were there, who possess nuclear weapons, and I would be working urgently with those partners to build a closer security relationship that guarantees our security in a time when the United States can be a
So that's Chrystia Freeland, former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Foreign Minister of Canada, and now one of the leading candidates to replace Justin Trudeau in the Liberal Party leadership race. And if you win the Liberal Party leadership race, you become the next Prime Minister because Trudeau is resigning. So 7:51, by the way, here on the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. So Canada now is going, it wants to acquire nuclear weapons because Trump decided to impose a 25% tariff. They need a nuclear deterrent to stop this threat, this economic Pearl Harbor being launched by the United States against Canada. So let me ask you, it is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day. Sorry, it's just hard to take these Canadians seriously. I mean, this is the most pathetic, childish, adolescent overreaction, I think, in world history. I mean, by the way, and I think Sandy's right on this, is Chrystia Freeland like mentally? No, seriously, is she not all up there? Like, is she, I'm serious, is she off her meds? You want to propose a nuclear arsenal in response to a 25% tariff? Is it what you want to nuke us? You want to start a nuclear war over a tariff? 617-266-6868. Okay. The Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. And obviously we're being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. Who do you think would win a nuclear arms race? A, Canada. B, the United States. I'm just saying, now that Canada's thinking about going nuclear, well, who do you think would win a nuclear arms race? Kazakhstan, Canada, or the good old USA? You can vote on our webpage, WRKO.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER, WRKO.com/Kuhner, KUHNER. If you prefer, you can vote via X. Again, my handle, I was very active last night as well. My handle on X is at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUHN as in national ER. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is from, by the way, you can text us 70470, 70470. This is from 603. Jeff, as far as threats from Canada are concerned, even though they are an important trade partner to us, we have overwhelming trade leverage over them. So I basically see Canada as the quote unquote, the mouse that roared. And I'm sure that's the way Trump sees them as well. By the way, Premier Ford is a hoser, eh? And this is from my sister Jennifer out in Tucson, Arizona, who, by the way, is married to a French Canadian. And as you know, my Jen is a ex-Canadian citizen the way I am. Born and raised in Canada, just like I was. Here is my sister's really passionate about this. Jeff, I don't think the Canadians understand that to have nukes, they actually need a military structure. Remember the 2 Rust Bucket submarines Canada had? By the way, did you inform the RKO listenership that the Ford brothers in Ontario are literally crackheads? We are dealing with crazy moonbats high on drugs. Now, I don't know about Premier Ford, but I do know his brother, the mayor or whatever, the ex-mayor of Toronto, literally was a cocaine addict. And I don't mean a previous addict. I mean, he was doing cocaine on the job. He was stoned every day doing lines of cocaine in the mayor's office. So these are the kinds of leaders that we're dealing with. Yeah, man. We're gonna nuke him, man. Oh, that's good stuff. Oh, what do you mean the cocaine's from America? We're not tariffing that. As my sister goes on to say, Jeff, Canadian military bases look more like Woodstock. So my sister is, let's put it this way, she's not impressed with these threats now coming from Canada. So let me ask you, just to set the table, and I want to go right back to the phone lines, 617-266-6868. The argument that many in the media are making, that Democrats are making, that Canadians, Mexicans, the Europeans as well, they're going to be getting tariffed by Donald Trump because they've been tariffing us for decades. And Trump is saying, I'm sick of these constant trade deficits. We have trade deficits with China. They keep ripping us off. We have trade deficits with Canada and Mexico. They keep ripping us off. We have constant trade deficits with the EU. They keep ripping us off. Enough is enough. I'm going to put American workers first, American manufacturing first, American jobs and American companies first. Like, I'm not going to keep giving away our wealth to the entire world. Enough is enough. The argument that's made against these tariffs is that they hurt the working middle class because they raise the price of goods, of imports. So, a Canadian lumber that comes in, that's going to cost more. Canadian cars that come in, that many Americans buy, are going to cost more. European products that come in are going to cost more. Chinese products that flood our market are going to cost more. So they say, ironically, it's going to lead to inflation. This is the argument, more inflation. And it's going to lead to a higher cost of living because everything is going to be much more expensive. Thereby, you're hurting and, frankly, screwing the working middle class. That's the argument. Trump's counter argument, and I think it's a brilliant one, is it's going to force companies from all over the world to come to the United States to avoid the tariffs, our tariffs, which will create infinitely more jobs, infinite more wealth, and it's going to restore our industrial manufacturing base that we have shipped out and outsourced to the rest of the world. That the deindustrialization of America is over and that America will be economically independent and self-sufficient again. I side with Trump. To me, this is not even a trade war. This is a trade response to decades of other countries imposing tariffs on us and of taking advantage of the United States and flooding our market with cheap goods, dumping their goods while preventing our products from being sold or putting massive tariffs on our products. I think this is long overdue, and I stand with Trump 1,000%. He is an economic patriot. And finally, he is standing up for America and American workers, American factories, and American jobs. But that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. Heather in Maine. Thanks for holding, Heather, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Very good. How are you, Heather?
Good. It's almost spring. It's feeling like spring. It's a good day. I just think this is almost comical. She's been talking to the liberal media too much, this Christia lady, I think. In a friendship, it's about give and take and mutual use of each other, kind of. And when it gets lopsided, somebody has to set a healthy boundary with the other person that's taking advantage. And that's what President Trump is doing, which is what he should be doing. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But they're acting like we're attacking them. We're a predator. No, we're just setting a healthy boundary, I believe. And her threat to us, it's like a hockey team, the captain of the hockey team that is friends with everybody, protecting everybody on that team and scoring all the time. It's like the kid on the bench threatening the captain. It's kind of comical, I think, and ridiculous.
Heather, I've got to ask you, because it's unleashed tremendous anger in Canada. I can't tell you. Look, even my sister-in-law, I still have family there, obviously, and Grace's older sister, who really, I have to say, is quite conservative in many issues. She's certainly she doesn't like Justin Trudeau, doesn't like the Liberal government in Ottawa. She is livid over these tariffs. When I went for my dad's funeral, he died in, Montreal in Canada. And so I went there to, bury my dad. At the funeral, my dad's friends came up to me and said, tell Trump to knock off this tariff. This is an attack on Canada. And I had, basically I said two things. I go, look, I'm here to bury my dad. It's a funeral, for God's sake. I don't want to discuss trade policy and politics now with my dad's body in a casket 6 feet away from me. Like, honestly, it's disrespectful to him. It's disrespectful to me and to my family. But number two, what I said to them was, I said, look, guys, relax. It's just a tariff. But they're not taking it that way. They're taking it, I'm literally, this is the term they use, economic terrorism, economic act of war. As you put it, a predator. As we're bullying Canada, we're attacking Canada. And so that and Trump's comments about Justin Trudeau, I think if he said it once or twice, it would be okay. But his constant reference to Trudeau as the governor of the 51st state. And so Canadians feel insulted that, we're not a country. That's their argument. That they're not a country. We're not a nation, according to them. We're just what? The 51st state of America. You're insulting our history. You're insulting our past. You're insulting our sovereignty. So you combine those two, and I can't tell you how inflamed passions are. To the point, Heather, we have a lot of listeners in Canada, and this has never happened before, where an issue has divided Kuhner country on a national basis. They're emailing me. These are Canadians in Montreal, in Toronto, out west, in Nova Scotia, in the Maritimes. It doesn't matter. And they're saying, tell Trump to knock off the tariffs. It is killing the conservative opposition, which was up 30 points in the polls. And they're going to have to call elections in Canada about October or November of this year. The Liberals now have gained all the ground back and are now even slightly ahead. They're saying this tariff issue and this constantly referring to Trudeau as the 51st and Canada as the 51st state and him as the governor of the 51st state has unleashed Canadian nationalism and a sense of wounded pride. And he says it's benefiting the left, who are milking this for all that it's worth. So it's a kind of a roundabout way of asking you, Heather, now we have Canadians, not just at hockey games, apparently WWE at this big wrestling event, where the national anthem is being booed. The American national anthem is constantly being booed in city after city, in province after province. So much so that on ESPN, one of their big talking heads, he has his own show, he's a host, Pat McAfee, has now come out and called Canada a terrible country, saying this is insulting to America and to Americans. You keep, okay, you want to boo us once or twice, fine. But now all the time? Every time the American national anthem is played at any sporting event, any entertainment event, any event whatsoever, it's a chorus of boos and FUs from Canadians in the crowd up in Canada. This is now ugly anti-Americanism. What say you, Heather? Is Canada slowly becoming, I don't want to overstate it, but are they now becoming an enemy of the United States? Or let's put it this way, are they now becoming increasingly hostile to the United States?
Jeff, I think that they're becoming like one of our woke states, like Massachusetts, defying the natural rules of a relationship. And, I don't think that either side should be disrespectful. to one another because we've had a great history with Canada. And I love that you're a former Canadian citizen and you have, so much knowledge about the subject. It's just interesting to hear you talk about it. But I think it's like they're just on the liberal side, the American liberal side, and they're not going to be able to use us the way they always have.
Bingo.
And so,
no, Heather, I think you really hit the nail right on the head. Look, and they don't see it or they don't want to see it. But, they keep saying, oh, we're friends and you've stabbed us in the back. And I'm like, no, friends don't exploit and use a friend doesn't exploit and use someone else. And that's what Canada has been doing now to the United States for decades. Canada only pays 1.3% of its GDP on the military, spends 1.3% of its GDP on military. To be a member of NATO, it's a minimum of 2%. So they've been economically free riding off of us now for decades. That's Trump's point. Never mind, they've been tariffing us for 20-some years, 25 years. So, as you rightly put it, Heather, look, I have a lot of great friends. But if one friend keeps, abusing the friendship and keeps using me and milking me and taking advantage of me, well, that's not friendship. That's exploitation. Friendship is supposed to be a relationship of mutual respect, of a mutual benefit, in a sense. I'm not saying you count pennies, but what I mean is, come on, you respect each other. It's a two-way street. This has been a one-way street for a very long time. And not just with Canada, with Mexico, with the EU, and with China. And, let me just say this, final word, because I want to go to the phone. I want to go to another caller. Why is it that the EU can assert its economic interests and the EU can tariff us? China can assert its economic interests and not just tariff us, but literally steal from us. Canada can assert its economic interests and tariff us. Mexico can tariff us. But we can't defend our own economic interests? And when we finally stand up for ourselves and say, no, we want trade, but it's got to be fair trade. It's got to be mutual. It's got to be reciprocal. Suddenly, the whole world is denouncing us? The Europeans hate us. The Canadians hate us. The Mexicans hate us. The Chinese hate us. I'm sorry, but I'm sick and tired of the world picking on the United States when all we're doing is defending our own. We're not conquering. We're not dominating. We're not imposing our will. We're not screwing anybody. They all do very well in their economic relationship with us. As Trump says, we want reciprocity. And if you won't give us reciprocity, we're going to tariff you and we're going to make reciprocity. Mel in New York, agree, disagree? Mel in New York. Thanks for holding, Mel, and welcome.
And Jeff. Oh, yes. Good morning, Jeff.
Mel, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. The callers have been fantastic this morning. Russ, Dave, Moses, Heather. It's just been really, really show this morning. Mel,
Mel, you're still in Saratoga, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're still in Saratoga, right, Mel?
Yes, I'm at home in Saratoga.
All right, so you're up in upstate New York, Mel. So you're fairly close to the Canadian border. Canada now says we're in a trade war. Canada now says they want to go nuclear. They want to get a nuclear weapon. Canada says now they're going to turn the lights off in Saratoga Springs, Mel. They're going to turn the lights off all across upstate New York. What say you?
Well, I think Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse area, Plattsburgh, they'll be more affected than that because I'm on National Grid. I don't believe that comes out of Canada. That's a British company, and I don't believe that my electric supply is generated through Canada. So I don't believe like I said, those few areas that I just mentioned, I think they have more to be concerned about than I do, because I'm right above Albany, New York, which is about 30 miles north of Albany. So I can't see the capital city putting up with this nonsense that this guy was just talking to me about, shutting the power off. So,
Mel, can you do me a favor? Mel, I'm up against a hard break. Please, I don't want to lose you. Hang on. I'm going to come right back to Mel, and I want to ask all of you. Canada says now we are in a trade war with Trump and with the United States. 20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, today is what many on the left are calling Doomsday, D-Day. Trump has now imposed tariffs, 25% on most Canadian imports, 10% on energy, 25% on every other Canadian product coming in, 25% on all Mexican products, and a further 10% on, as Trump would say, China. So, the left is saying now we are in an era of trade wars. Canada now is retaliating with 25% across the board on most American products. Mexico is retaliating as well. So is China. The EU will be next. But Canada in particular says this is an act of war. That's how they're calling it. An act of war by Donald Trump and the United States on Canada. And now they're calling for massive retaliation. Some in the leadership of the Liberal Party are even calling for Canada to acquire nuclear weapons. Let's go right back to Mel in New York. He lives in Sarasota Springs, and which is about maybe 30 minutes outside of Albany, north of Saratoga. My bad. That would be in Florida. My bad. You're right. Saratoga Springs. My bad. Which is about 30 minutes north of Albany. And he says, if the Canadians turn off the electricity, it's going to be felt more in Rochester, in Syracuse, in Plattsburgh, areas close to the Canadian border, not where he lives. Mel, please pick up where you left off.
Yeah, not to mention Buffalo. But anyway, Christia Newland, her grandfather, he worked for the Nazi Party. He was a propagandist. There was a newspaper over there that he worked for that published a lot of propaganda that the Nazi Party that was in power during World War II. So I mean, but for her to be talking, Canada. I mean, for her to be, she's a little too. That's a little too close for comfort for us here in New York State, let alone the United States, be talking that kind of crap about nuclear weapons. I mean, they may become the 51st state a little sooner than they want, and not the way they want if they keep that up. Because, you don't go making threats like that without some sort of repercussions. So she better watch what she's talking about and how she's talking, and just forget about that idea before it's too late. But,
Mel, it's very funny because I'm listening to you and I'm saying, look at the reaction, in this great Kuhner country audience like Mel, who's close to the Canadian border. And we're talking about Canada getting nuclear weapons. And Mel is saying, and I agree with you, Mel, that's too close for comfort. I don't like this. Now you know how the Russians feel when Biden and Zelensky said we're going to have Ukraine join NATO and put nuclear missiles on the Ukraine-Russian border. And I want to ask the audience, I know it's Canada, it's hard to take Canada seriously, I get it. But look, think about it. Trudeau has now become essentially the cat's paw of China. He's become a pawn of China. The Chinese have infiltrated the Trudeau government and for the most part the entire liberal leadership in Canada. And Canadian business, Canadian society, Canadian culture, Canadian media. The Chinese have infiltrated Canada much more than the United States. So if Canada does go nuclear, all kidding aside, they would in many ways fall under the influence of China. Now, would we want a radical left-wing anti-American government with crazies like Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland to have nuclear weapons right on our doorstep? Most Americans would say absolutely not. So what I'm saying is, if we don't like having nuclear weapons right on our border, and, you know, this is from historically one of our best friends and one of our best partners, Canada. Well, now you know why the Russians couldn't accept Ukraine in NATO. I mean, it's, in other words, just put yourself into another person's shoes, and then you begin to understand why they do what they do. Mel, if Canada ever went nuclear, do you think the United States would have to respond and intervene?
I think that the United States would not even let them get to that point, because there would be a lot of things that could be done behind the scenes that would deter them from getting it. So, but for her to be yakking like that, hey, she better watch her step. That's all I can say. She had better watch her steps. But, you know, that not to get off of that subject, but in regards to NATO, not only do we have to get away from NATO, you know, just get the heck away from it. Hey, we have to board up the UN too. Shut that down. Get all of these diplomats out of our country. And President Trump was also talking about you know, South Carolina and how that was a furniture manufacturing hub of this country. You had Broyhill, you had other manufacturers down there in South Carolina, in that area, that made quality product furniture. Not this throwaway garbage you see today, full of flake board that comes from China with all kind of chemicals mixed into it to hold it together and everything else. This was all quality stuff made in the United States. And when we just cut off, you know, everyone come back home and start making products here, quality product, not this throwaway garbage.
I love it.
And the rest of the world will be buying off of us. They'd be running over each other to get our product.
I love it. Mel, honestly, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Mel, as always, thank you very much for that call. In fact, I want to play that clip of Trump. You got to hear it, where he says, you know, one of these iconic furniture manufacturers in the Carolinas, and it got destroyed because of cheap labor and outsourcing. I've got that. More next. Do you fear Canada? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, Canada now says there will be massive economic retaliation against the United States for what they, for Trump imposing a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods. Some in the leadership of the Liberal Party, the party that now runs Canada, are literally talking about nuclear weapons. That Canada will go nuclear, should go nuclear, in the face now of what they say is this economic terrorism from Donald J. Trump. 617-266-6868 is the number. Listen now to Trump. This was him yesterday at the White House, saying tariffs are going to start tomorrow, meaning today, 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico. Enough is enough. This is reciprocal. The Canadians have been tariffing us for a long time and engaging in unfair trade practices. I'm just leveling the playing field. Roll cut 15, Mike.
Tariffs, as you know, it'll start a week earlier than the reciprocal, which is going to be on a couple of weeks earlier. Reciprocal tariffs start on April 2nd. And I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to go April Fool's Day, because that costs a lot of money, but that one day, so we're going April 2nd. But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start.
So, and now all hell is broken loose. The Mexican government is now vowing massive retaliation. The Canadian government is vowing massive retaliation. And in fact, Canada already, according to Justin Trudeau, they're imposing huge retaliatory tariffs on many American goods and products. Listen now to Trump saying, we will win these trade wars. And we're going to bring many manufacturing plants out of Canada, out of Mexico, out of China, out of Europe. They're going to come right back to the United States. Roll cut 15A, Mike.
What they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. In other words, you build, and this is exactly what Mr. Wei is doing, by building here. Otherwise, they'll build, if they did them in Taiwan to send them here, they'll have 25% or 30% or 50% or whatever the number may be someday. It'll go only up. But by doing it here, he has no tariff, so he's way ahead of the game. And
now, listen to Trump's message to Canada and Mexico, saying, you want to do business with the United States? Relocate to the United States. If you're inside America, there's no tariff. But if you're outside America, you're going to get hit with a 25% tariff. So if you're smart, bring your jobs, bring your capital, bring your investment, bring your plants here. And he talks about that store that Mel was referencing, this furniture business that had been wiped out by so-called free trade, cheap labor, and foreign factories. And he says those days are over. Roll cut 15B, Mike.
I would just say this to people in Canada or Mexico, if they're going to build car plants, the people that are doing them are much better off building here because we have the market. We're the market where they sell the most. And so I think it's going to be very exciting for the automobile companies. Very exciting for, I can think of any, as an example, North Carolina, they had the great, I used to go there to buy furniture for hotels, and it's been wiped out. That business all went to other countries. And now it's all going to come back into North Carolina, the furniture manufacturing business.
Amen. Amen. That's what I mean. He's putting American interests first, and American workers first, and American jobs, and American companies, and American manufacturing first. He's completely right. And, Mel, just to reinforce what Mel was saying from, Saratoga Springs, that furniture store, and many, was top quality craftsmanship, but it couldn't compete with Chinese goods or other goods or Mexican goods where they make, frankly, cheap furniture, $5 a day or $3 a day, sweatshop cheap labor, and they just dump them into the United States. And so eventually they kept undercutting American companies and American manufacturers, and those plants left. Those jobs were gone. And all of that wealth was outsourced to other countries. And what did we get? We didn't get, great I'm just using furniture as an example. We didn't get great furniture or take toys. Every toy now is made in China. It's all garbage. It's garbage. It's cheap, low quality stuff. And what Trump is saying, no, we're gonna bring all these jobs back. We're going to manufacture and build in America with American pride, American craftsmanship, and good old-fashioned American quality with American wages. So a working man or a working woman can feed their family and put some money in their pocket. Now, a lot of reaction from many of you in the audience. This is from Eric on Messenger, and I agree with Eric, not 100, but 1,000%. Jeff, Canada is a spoiled child. It is time for them to grow up and take responsibility for their own lives. I agree with you, Eric. Completely. This is from Mark on Messenger. Jeff, there's even a coffee shop in Canada, I know I heard about this story, that even changed the name of one of their coffees from Americanos to Canadianos. This is how screwed up in the head they have become up there, Jeff. What the hell is happening to this world? And quite frankly, Jeff, I am sick and tired of other countries disrespecting the United States of America. But who's the first country they come to when they need help? Yeah, they are North Americans. Well, that's a good point about an Americano. No, you're right. Yeah, Canadians are, they are North Americans. And Sandy's point is, so what's wrong with an Americano? Well, you see, that's the anti-American fever now they have there. You're dead on. No, and Mark is also dead on. Notice all these countries that bitch and whine and complain, whether it's Mexico, Canada, all the Europeans, when there's a problem, who do you call? Not Ghostbusters. You call Uncle Sam. Okay, one more, and then I want to go to the phone lines. This is from Lauren, also on Messenger. Jeff, the Canadians love to come to the U.S. for their health care and their medical needs. Maybe we should close our border to them so they can't come down here to utilize what we have to offer. Well, that's why I think the Canadians should be very careful, because they are playing with fire. And they're very lucky. Most Americans ignore Canada. Frankly, we kind of laugh at Canada. We don't take Canada and Canadians too seriously. But if they start to become a real pain and a real nuisance and start doing some real damage to the United States, I don't think they're going to like the response. You know, we said this about you. I'm not talking military response, just so that people know. But you know the expression with the Ukrainians, we said, stop poking the Russian bear. You poke the bear, the bear's going to growl. Well, don't poke the American eagle. You keep poking the American eagle, the eagle's going to come after you. Again, I'm not saying militarily, I'm saying economically. I mean, we could really destroy Canada if we wanted to. So I wouldn't play around with us if I were them. Dane in South Dakota. Thanks for holding, Dane, and welcome.
Yes, Jeff. Real quick, I want to get your poll question answered right away because it's a real bang for an answer. But I also like to follow up with two quick points.
Dane, can you hold on? Something happened with the phone. Hold on. You sound like... And I also want to ask two other questions. So let's see if we can reconnect with you, Dane, so you sound like a human being and not an android. All right, Dane, do we have you? Are you there, Dane?
I'm here, Jeff. Can you hear me?
You sound like you're out of like that, you know, that bar scene in Star Wars? You know, you sound like one of, or maybe like R2-D2 or something. Okay, let's try it again. Dane in the great state of South Dakota.
Yes, Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound like a human being. Go ahead, Dane.
I tell you that NSA, they really hate to have the two of us talk. Quickly to your poll question, Jeff, and I got a couple of follow-up quick points. This woman, to try and shake down America with a nuclear threat that she's going to get a nuclear bomb, let me tell you something. This woman, I don't think she could find a way to light the fuse of a lady.
Dane, can you please hang on? I'm up against the hard break. We're gonna come right back to Dane in South Dakota. Are you for or against Trump's tariffs? On the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, we're going to go right back to Dane in South Dakota, but this is a hilarious text from my sister, again, from Tucson, Arizona. You know that coffee shop that Mark in Medford, messaged us about? That is no longer, they've removed a coffee called Americanos, and they've renamed it Canadianos. Well, since Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister or ex-Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, wants to now acquire nuclear weapons against Donald Trump, Jeff, maybe that coffee shop should make a Nucleanos. All this over a 25% tariff. All right, Dane in South Dakota, you were saying Chrystia Freeland's a whack job. We all agree on that, Dane. Please pick up where you left off.
Yeah, it's such insanity. It's embarrassing that this woman should be mentioned. But you know something? President Trump's been known to say, drill, baby, drill. Well, he's speaking tonight. the first things out of his mouth tonight when he opens up his speech, he should say, tariffs, baby, tariffs. You know something? He needs to really speak some fire and brimstone tonight. If things are getting serious, and he doesn't have time to play around with these moonbat idiots all over the world. Europe stabs us in the back. You know, since becoming president, he is not the commander-in-chief. We, the people, have not seen one single perp walk or indictment. I would like that to happen, too. You know, and as far as this guy Zelensky, you were speaking of earlier, this guy's not going anywhere. The world is dealing with a modern-day Mussolini, Napoleon. And quite honestly, I'm surprised the Academy Awards didn't give Zelensky an honorary Oscar for acting. You know, as long as he knows he's relevant and he's in the spotlight, he'll stick around. But I'll tell you something. In the end, he's going to be history and irrelevant and gone, just like the dust in the wind. And I'll tell you, Canada, I'm just like, wow. I mean, I spent some very beautiful summers up there. Wonderful people. Jeff, you were the smartest person that ever left Canada because you had the intelligence to come to the United States, become a citizen.
Dane, thank you very, very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Look, I mean, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I want to stay on this whole quote-unquote tariff war between Canada and the United States and Mexico and the United States. I think Zelensky's in big trouble. I know we talked about it in the first hour and a half of the show, but if he's not careful, like Mussolini, his own people may hang him. They may hang him from a lamppost, especially if word starts to get out how much money he and his people stole. So again, if I'm Zelensky, I'd be very careful. But no, look, there's something going on. I think it's the manipulation in the Canadian media, the propaganda in the Canadian media, where they're using Trump derangement syndrome and they're trying to scapegoat him for all of Canada's problems. And look, it all started with one conversation. Justin Trudeau, who, by the way, kept calling Trump a racist and Trump supporters racists. So that crazy moonbat who's driven Canada right into the ground, but no question, the worst prime minister, he was basically their Joe Biden, the worst prime minister Canada ever had. And so now Trump has won the election in November and they're at Mar-a-Lago, and Justin Trudeau, after calling him every name in the book, goes down and he tries to blackmail Trump the way Zelensky tried to blackmail Trump. But Trudeau wanted to do it with emotional blackmail. And so he says, you know, asking us to pay more for NATO, our military spending, the way you're demanding. In other words, don't just freeload and free ride off of the American security guarantee that we have for Canada, but actually be a functioning participatory member of NATO. So asking us to pay more for our defense and saying we got to have a more fair trade relationship. Well, that's going to cost us hundreds of billions of dollars in the end. And Trump's like, okay, so that's your problem. How's that my problem? And Trudeau says to him, well, Canada can't survive that. So he's trying to blackmail Trump emotionally. Like, in other words, you're going to be responsible for the cratering, the crash, the destruction of the collapse of Canada. And Trump looks at him and he can tell, you're trying to play me, buddy. You're trying to, as the term is, you're trying to gaslight me. You're trying to manipulate me, blackmail me. So Trump says to him point blank, hold on, Justin, let me ask you this. You're trying to tell me that if I impose a 25% tariff and we stop subsidizing Canada's military, your country, Canada, can't survive? Trudeau's answer, yes. And that's when Trump said, well, if your country can't survive a 25% tariff and you can't pay for your own military, then you might as well just become the 51st state. And Trudeau had no response. In other words, I'm not buying your BS. I'm not succumbing to your blackmail. You're not going to blackmail me on this. You guys have been imposing more than 25% tariffs on many of our goods for 20 years now. And riding our back for God knows even longer on the military issue. And we're still surviving as a country. We haven't collapsed. So you guys can't carry your own water? Well, if you can't carry your own water and you can't pay your own freight, then just become the 51st state. You don't have to worry about military. We'll take care of all your military spending. And you don't have to worry about a tariff because you'll be part of the internal American market. And that's when he began to constantly tease him as the governor of the 51st state. Now, that idiot Trudeau ran to the Canadian media, who are all in bed with him, and said, he's insulting Canada. He's insulting all Canadians. He says our country isn't real. Our past, our history, our culture, our heritage. He thinks we're just this 51st state. And like, no, stupid. You went down and you told Trump to his face in front of multiple witnesses, so you can't deny it. A 25% tariff and asking you to pay 2% of your GDP on military spending because you are a member of NATO. And you said your country can't survive. It can't survive. Well, then you're not a country. Now, I'm telling you, Canada can afford a 25% tariff, and they can pay 2, even 3% GDP on the military. They just don't want to. Well, I'm sorry. Grow up, put on your big boy pants, and take it like a man. Okay? It's going to be a fair trade relationship. And if you want to continue to be a part of NATO, and if you want to continue to be benefiting from American security, then pay your freaking 2% like every other member of NATO. If Poland can do it, you can do it. If Estonia can do it, you can do it. If Britain can do it, you can do it. It's not that hard. Just cut some of the welfare. Try it. You may realize it actually benefits you economically and your citizens. You won't have so many leeches and welfare deadbeats in Canada. Try it. Al in Connecticut. Thanks for holding, Al, and welcome.
Taking my call and my deepest condolences on the loss of your dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Al. Thank you.
Let me run this by you. She threatened with nuclear weapons. That's a preemptive threat. China's involved in Canada. China's involved in Europe. The Europeans are upset about the tariffs. China's upset about the tariffs. Mexico is upset. Now Canada's upset. Why? Maybe they were talking in the background and she let the cat out of the bag that they want to attack the United States because now they have to play fair grounds.
Well, Al, all kidding aside, because, I like to tease Canadians, but all kidding aside, Al, and this has been widely reported. I mean, this is not just a matter of opinion. There's no European country, and it's bad in the United States, don't get me wrong, but nothing like here in the United States. No country outside of Asia. Okay? In Asia, the Chinese, for example, in North Korea, they basically own North Korea. They've penetrated many other Asian countries. But outside of Asia now, no other country in the world has been infiltrated the way Canada has by the communist Chinese. In fact, now there are stories breaking that literally they got Justin Trudeau reelected. The way the communist Chinese have bought Joe Biden, they have bought Justin Trudeau. And I suspect they have bought this woman, Chrystia Freeland. I practically guarantee it. The Liberal Party is nothing more now than a mouthpiece and a shill for communist China. And Al, not to get too far afield, but it was the Trudeau government and Chrystia Freeland as then the foreign minister that literally made an arrangement with China, communist China, to send their troops to Canada to train in more in the northern part of Canada near the Arctic in case Chinese troops had to engage in a winter war against the United States. And when the Americans found out, all bloody hell broke loose. And so Trudeau had to backtrack and say no to the Chinese. But the point is his government was willing to agree to let Chinese troops on Canadian soil train for winter warfare against the United States. That's how much they own Trudeau. That's how much they own the Liberal Party, which he leads. That's how much they own the government. So the Canadian media is owned by the Chinese. Canadian business bows to the Chinese, the communist Chinese. So what you're starting to see now, slowly but surely, is that the left in Canada is becoming ultimately now a shill, a pawn of communist China. So you're right, Al. The idiot let the cat out of the bag. They would like to become a nuclear power because China can then leverage Canada as a nuclear power if it ever wanted to threaten or blackmail the United States. And that's why I'm positive that there are phone calls right now being made to Ottawa, the capital of Canada, in which Trump is telling them, you better knock this off because we're not going to allow you to even come close to getting your hands on a nuclear weapon. On our border, with all of your ties to China, I don't think so. I don't think so. So, Al, they're starting to threaten us. I mean, this is getting a bit dangerous. Look, and the reason why, Al, as I said, it was a personal story, but I was like looking at my wife, and my sister was there as well, from Tucson, and we're looking at each other. What is wrong with all these people? And then you just turn on the news. It's nonstop. Trump is bad. Trump is bad. The tariff's going to destroy us. The tariff's going to send us into a recession. He's calling us the 51st state. He's insulting us. You can see that they're manipulating the Canadian public, so much so that at my father's funeral, these are old friends of his, and they're shaking my hand, condolences on your dad, and then right away they go, you've got to tell Trump to stop the tariff. I'm like, what? They're like, it's going to ruin us. Is he crazy? This is an economic attack. This is war. I'm like, first of all, my father is dead, for God's sake. Can you show some respect? Number one. Number two, it's a lousy 25% tariff. America's had tariffs on Canada going back hundreds of years. Canada's had tariffs on America since Canada was founded in 1867. Relax, man. Take it easy. Have a drink. But, Al, you can see the manipulation, the constant propaganda. It reminds me a lot of the Russia collusion hoax. Russia. That's what they're in Canada. It's Trump. Tariff. Terrorism. Tariffs equal terrorism. That's what the Canadian mind is being fed. And this is now what is starting to produce. To the point, Al, I'm telling you, don't go to a hockey game in Canada because they'll boo every game now. They just boo the national anthem, the American national anthem. Any entertainment event it's, F you, F America, boo. To the point now that American players are complaining, saying this is really gross and disrespectful. So there's almost like a fever, a collective insanity that is starting to grip much of Canada. Al, final word to you.
Well, what I'd like to see if Trump's people are listening is Trump break down all the tariffs that Canada has on us. Break it all down, show the Canadian people how many tariffs they have on our products, and say, really, 25%? How about now you get 75% instead of 25%?
Al, I love it. I think that's the only mistake Trump is making. I mean, I agree with the policy. I agree with the goal. I agree with the objective. But I think he needs to message it and communicate it better. Look, the Mexicans know they're taking advantage of us. Like the Mexicans, it's pretty obvious. And the Chinese, it's pretty obvious. And even the Europeans, frankly, you talk to in private, yeah, we've been screwing America for a long time. They'll tell you. Nah, we don't allow their agricultural products in. Nah, we don't allow any American vehicles or cars in. Nah, but we sell our cars and we sell our agriculture products. The Canadians are under this illusion that it's really a free trade agreement. Like, no, like Canadians don't tariff Americans and Americans don't tariff Canadians. So they're like, well, why is Trump doing this? And I think if Trump just addressed Canada, maybe even visit Canada, and so have all the media there and address the country and say, well, look, before I came, this is what you got for 25 years. Here are your tariffs. And 170, 160, 150, 100% on eggs, on milk, on cheese, on just run down the whole line. Canadians will say, oh. So I'm going with 25% because you guys have been unfair to us. And you can break the spell, that fever like this. So I agree with you, Al. He's got to talk to Canada and talk to Canadians directly. And I think then he'll clearly win the argument because he has all the facts on his side. Al, thank you very much for that call. And then, by the way, all these idiots calling for nuclear weapons and this is an economic war and, all these idiots, they're going to look like absolute fools. John, speaking of Arizona, in Arizona. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Hey, morning, Jeffrey?
Oh, you bring it all back, John. You bring it all back.
A quick comments, and I'll be really quick. We've created an entitlement, global entitlement, and I think it's a global entitlement syndrome, and I see it everywhere. We've given for every reason to all these countries and every cause in the world. And guess what? They expect it in return. Everybody. So I call it GES, Global Entitlement Syndrome. But I wanted to make just a quick comments about Canada. Canada has so many, resources and things for the USA, like, let's say hockey, snow and ice, beer, high taxes, the Royal Mountaineers. I get on down the list and I think about it. Healthcare and assisted suicide. And I look at it and I say, all these interesting things you give us. Oh, Tim Hortons. And then my favorite, curling. And I look at that and I do that in jest because I really do care and I love Canada, period. I would never disparage them in any way other than just what I did. But I go back to what I originally said. We've created that culture. Now we're having to deal with it. And it's a heck of a journey to get through this.
Oh, brilliant.
And Trump has got a hell of a time. And I hope that we can get this resolved because I think there's a heck of a lot of good Canadians up there that think about not America so much, but the good values and morals that they have and that we have as a people in civilized society. I want to thank you, and I want to tell you it was 0 degrees centigrade last night and this morning, so it's been cold.
Yeah, for Arizona. John, thank you very, very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Very good call. No, look, I think really you put your finger right on the pulse of it. The Europeans have gotten so used. You're right. It's like a global entitlement mentality or a global welfare entitlement mentality. We underwrite European security. They don't say thank you. We protect Europe basically almost for free. They don't say thank you. We give them massive access to our market, helping them with their prosperity. They don't say thank you. Canada, same thing. We've protected them for almost basically for free. For how long now? Giving them massive access to our market, again, basically for free. They don't say thank you. So you're right. What's happening now is Trump, it's like weaning somebody off of welfare. It's very hard to do because they become so dependent, and with dependence comes not gratitude, but a sense of entitlement, like we owe them. And that's what you're seeing all across Europe, all across Canada, all across Mexico. and the Chinese now as well. And I'm sorry, but the bank is closed, and Uncle Sam is no longer going to be Uncle Sucker. So everybody's got to be an adult. It's called personal responsibility and self-reliance. Carry your own water. Oh, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Rose in Woburn. Thanks for holding, Rose, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi,
my condolences for the death of your father.
Thank
He's
you.
got a great son. You'll be very proud.
Thank you.
I want to tell you about my experiences because I'm of the older generation. I'm a daughter of immigrants, so we didn't have much of anything, so I really know what's going on. But I do want to tell you, as life progresses, things get better. And I was enrolled in a school of nursing, and you had to stay in there and come home one day a week. But we met people from different places, and we had a girl that came from Van Buren, Maine. But she was French, beautiful-looking girl. I introduced her to a doctor who was a medical student at the time. They got married, and we went up to Van Buren, Maine, which is right over the border from Canada. And, of course, I had never been out of any place or gone anywhere, so it was all new to me. But we went up there, and her mother and father, their family were very hospitable. And what it is, her father owned a little restaurant right in Van Buren, Maine, which is right on the borderline of Canada. And so we were there, and they had us to dinner. They friends of ours, it's nurses only, and we went out. And I went into the bathroom. And when I went into the bathroom, because there were families there, and it was quite interesting to see people with children out for dinner in a restaurant, because we never did any of those things. And so I go into the bathroom, and I see all these clothes. There's shoes, there's socks, there's clothes just laying on the floor. And I came out and I said, there's all kinds of clothes in there. Why are there clothes in the bathroom? What it was is the Canadians were coming to Van Buren, to the United States, to buy clothes. They were going to eat there, go in the bathroom, take off their clothes from Canada, put the new clothes on, and walk back over the border. Okay? So they paid no taxes on or anything. They just left old clothes and wore the new clothes, and that was their entrance. So that was a real surprise to me. The second encounter with Canada, again, was at higher education. I went on to take another program after the nursing, and we had a girl who was also French, and she was very active, and she liked sports like I did, especially hockey. And so what she does is we decided, I said, didn't go, I went to the Bruins once, but I said, I love hockey. I was really a hockey fan in the high school and so forth. So I said, I would love to. So she invited us up there. And what she did is we wrote to the Bruins and said we were two students and we'd like to go to the game of the Bruins against the Canadians up north. And so they got us tickets, and we got up there. We went up there. When we went to the hockey arena, I could not believe it. The people that were there were dressed in tuxes and dresses because they all go out to dinner and then they go to the hockey game. I never seen it. It was like talking to a prom that was at the rink. So they have a different kind of thing. But those are my two experiences from there. So they're resourceful people, and they can manage to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Oh, I agree.
So
No, Rose, you're dead on. Look, it brings back memories. The style has kind of changed a little bit. People now go a little bit more casual when they go see the Montreal Canadiens play. It's been about 15, 20 years now. Things have gotten very expensive in Canada. People like to eat out in Montreal. They used to. They can't afford it now, so many people won't eat out either before or after the game. But I remember in the 1970s, 80s, going into the 1990s, growing up in Canada, you go to a Canadiens game, and you wouldn't believe how many people are in business suits. Or the women are dressed in, very nice, either pantsuits or outfits or dresses. I mean, there was a lot of, as the French would say, savoir-faire, know-how. But things have changed. Taxes have been very high for a long time. The government now it's a socialist country. It's essentially now become a socialist country. They have high taxes. They have high regulations. The government now runs almost every key aspect of Canadian society. They have huge government deficits. Cost of living is extremely expensive. And the standard of living in Canada has been relentlessly declining now for decades. And to me, what is most disgusting is that they're trying to blame now Canada's problems on Trump and on this 25% tariff, which, by the way, just took effect today, literally today. And they have to look at themselves. And to be honest, that's why I was so worried about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Because as the expression goes, I've seen the future and it doesn't work. I saw the future in Canada. What Biden and the Democrats and the radical left wanted America to become. And I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And, you know, there are potholes everywhere. You go to Montreal, there are potholes everywhere. Because there's never enough money for basic services. And you pay taxes on everything. Again, I don't want to give you the story of my life, but, you know, speaking of my dad's death, I can't, they're taxing everything on, my dad paid taxes multiple times. Now he's passed away. His inheritance, he gave a little bit to myself and to my sister, and there's taxes on that. I mean, you buy a casket for my dad, there's taxes. I'm not kidding. To cremate his body, taxes. To bury the body, taxes. And so Grace had a conversation with some woman from Revenue Canada, basically their version of the IRS, and she said, so let me get this straight. He paid taxes and taxes and taxes and now wants to leave something for his children, and you're taxing that? And her answer was, I'm not kidding. It's Canada. Everything is taxed. Another log on the fire, as I like to say. And then I promise we'll get right back to the phone lines. President Trump, now, again, what is the theme of his presidency? I know he's addressing a joint session of Congress tonight, but in his young presidency, it's obvious. He is here to protect America and defend the American national interest. You see it in Ukraine. You see it in these tariffs. You see it what he's doing with Canada, Mexico, next week the European Union, China. He just added another 10% tariff. He is pushing economic patriotism, nationalism, and the defense of America and American national interests. However, he's also doing it on the cultural front. Over the weekend, and this has been overlooked because of the blow-up with Zelensky and his joint session with Congress and the tariffs now that are kicking in today, but over the weekend, he signed an executive order, the first of its kind, a history-making executive order, whereby English is now going to be, for the first time in American history, the official language of the United States. Of course, it's always been our primary language from our inception, from our birth, but never before have we had a federal, it's not a law, it's an executive order, but we've never had English recognized through the federal government as the official language of the United States. Trump signed the order on Saturday. Now, a law has not been passed by Congress, which is what you need to codify this and make it permanent. But it's a big step towards potentially getting Congress to pass a law making English the official designated language of the United States of America. Many countries around the world have a language that they have picked as the official designated language of that nation or that country. Some, like Canada, speaking of Canada, have two official languages. In that case, English and French. Belgium, for example, has French and Flemish, which is essentially a form of Dutch. So Switzerland, in fact, has 3 official languages: German, French, and Italian. Most countries, though, have a single official language. Now, let me give you my position, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. I am completely in favor of what Trump has done. for several reasons. Number one, I think it is very good for a society, especially as ethnically, racially diverse as the United States, to have a single, unifying, cohesive language. If you want to have a united country, you need a united culture. And there is nothing that unifies a culture more than an official language, and especially a single language, in our case, English. And so I believe if you want to keep and preserve America as a country going forward, we need to have English recognized, A, as the official language, B, as the language of our government, as the language that's taught in our schools, as the language that we do business in. Now, it doesn't mean, for example, you can't speak other languages. Of course you can. And it even doesn't mean that in some cases, for example, governments cannot issue papers or documents in another language if somebody, for example, really struggles, say, with English. But what it says is that we are one nation, one people, one culture. And if we're going to be one nation and one people and one culture, then we have to have one language that unites all of us. So we can talk in a common language. We can express ideas in a common language. And especially for newcomers and immigrants, legal immigrants to our country, the way to rise, the way to succeed, the way to assimilate is through the English language. Now, so to me, I not only support this, I want Congress to ratify it in law. That's me. However, there are two primary criticisms, one from the left and one from the right. The left and the Democrats are denouncing Trump. Why? Because they're claiming, I swear to you, that having an official language is racist, that it's bigoted, it's discriminatory, it discriminates, say, against Latinos or people who speak Spanish or Muslims who may speak Arabic or other languages. So it discriminates against Americans who may be multilingual or who may come from other countries around the world, and they want to preserve their language and their culture in the name of multiculturalism. And so they say this is part of an imperialist project by Trump that is a racist project that goes against diversity, inclusion, and equity. The attack from the right is, to me, a little more interesting. This is predictable from the left. They want to balkanize America. They want to disunite America. They want to destroy American history, America's heritage, America's culture, anything that binds and unites us together. And nothing binds and unites us like a common language. So obviously the left sees this now as a real attack on multiculturalism and DEI, which is exactly what it is. The right, the libertarians in particular, make an interesting argument. Their argument is that the state and the government has no business in dictating culture or language policy. That it's something that we've survived as a country, as an English-speaking country, since our birth, since our inception, without ever having English as our official language. And what the libertarian, at least some libertarians argue, is that if you make English the official language, you are giving the government even more power. And this very same government, if they can designate English as the official language, can turn around and say, well, we'll designate Spanish eventually as an official language. We'll have 2 official languages, or maybe 3 if China becomes prevalent or Chinese becomes prevalent. In other words, what the government gives, the government has the power to take away. And the example that they cite is what happened under the Clinton administration, if you remember, in the 1990s. When Bill Clinton, through the Defense of Marriage Act, defined marriage as part of the official government, federal government policy, as the marriage, as the union between a man and a woman. And they said, well, now the government was literally defining marriage, the family. It got involved in this most intimate relationship. Well, what happened 20 years later? When the woke left took over, they then defined marriage as between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. If you give government that kind of power to define the essence of marriage, that same government can redefine the essence of marriage. So in this case, you give government the power to define what an official language is. That same government can redefine what the official language is. I understand the argument. I respect the argument. I honestly think it's a very interesting argument. My counter argument to that is we are overwhelmed with illegal immigration. There are many parts of the United States where literally I don't even hear English spoken anymore. I will often feel, say, in places in Boston, or, take Brockton or Chelsea or many places where I will go and I don't hear English. I feel like a stranger in my own country. And so in the face of this onslaught of multiculturalism, of diversity, equity, inclusion, of multiculturalism, and frankly, of the loss of English in so much of our public institutions, whether you look at TV channels, how many of them either in Spanish or there's a lot of Ukrainian, Korean. You look at TV, increasingly foreign languages. In schools, foreign languages. You go to, I go to a McDonald's, not my McDonald's, but many McDonald's, I hear orders done in other languages other than English. We have to preserve our mother tongue while we still can. English has been America's language since our revolution. It is the language that has given us the greatest country in the world. It is our native language. We must fight for it, preserve it, protect it. You can text us 70470, 70470. The text line is on fire. It is blasting on all cylinders. This is from 617. Jeff, I'm just wondering, is French the official language of France? Is Polish the official language of Poland? How about Germany and the rest of these countries? The short answer, yes. Yes. French is the official language of France. Polish is the official language of Poland. I mean, I could go down one after another. German is the official language of Deutschland, of Germany. What are they? Are they all fascist countries now? Are they all repressive, racist countries? No. I mean, Egyptian is the official language of Egypt. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, Japanese is the official language of Japan. Yeah. So why can't we have English be the official language of America? Okay. This is from 508. Jeff. Libertarians that you've been talking about throughout the years have never had to deal with the massive illegal immigration that we have in America and the push now for Spanish to be spoken in America. As in press 1 for, which, by the way, every time I call my pharmacy, every time I call my doctor, for all kinds of appointments, I'm not kidding. It's, habla español, whatever the press is in Spanish, dos. In other words, press 2 for Spanish or press 1 for Spanish, or if you speak English, press 1. I'm like, why do I got to press 1 to speak English? I'm in America, man. I mean, the Constitution, what language was it written in? What, seriously, what? Russian? Croatian? Serbian? Can somebody explain this to me? I mean, what is it? Vietnamese? It was in English. The Bill of Rights in English. The Declaration of Independence in English. What language have we spoken for the last, hundreds and hundreds of years? English. I mean, this is not rocket science. So, call me crazy. I don't want to keep pressing 2 or press 1 to speak English. I just want to speak English. Butch in Natick. Thanks for holding, Butch, and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Kuhner. It's been a couple of months since I first spoke to you, and I just want to offer, from my family to yours, our heartfelt condolences on the loss of your dad.
Thank you very much, Butch. You're making me a little nervous when you call me Mr. Kuhner. Are you from the FBI? Are you from the IRS? Are you?
No, just showing a little respect.
Oh, thank you. I'm not that important, Butch. Really, please call me Jeff.
Okay, Jeff. Your parents raised you right. That's all.
Thank you, Butch. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Canada. I really don't sweat them. Personally, I would have raised the tariffs to 50% to really make it hurt. Let's put it this way. The Gloucester fishermen could wipe out their Navy, all right? Our Salvation Army could wipe out their Army. I can keep going. And when they talk about nuclear missiles, okay, to me, their nuclear missile is an equivalent of a bottle rocket, all right? So I'm not too worried about Canada, okay? Their prime minister, she's unbelievable. Justine, do they have a short memory how they were treated during COVID, especially the truckers? I mean, honestly, that's why I'm so surprised that they blew the national anthem. And we don't need them. And if Trump pulls the plug on that, I'm fine with it. They need us more than we need them. And that's just my take on that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Concise, to the point. You nailed it. We don't need them. They need us. Or as you put it, they need us a hell of a lot more than we need them. Butch, thank you very much for that call. Harry in Maine. Thanks for holding, Harry, and welcome.
My pleasure, Jeff. Good morning. Great show as always.
Thank you, Harry.
Jeff, I'm going to give you 3 quick points, but I'm going to make a quick comment first that I agree 100% on what you said about our language, and it needs to be English. The other person that is really adamant about that is Viktor Orban in Hungary. He makes that a big thing about how they keep their culture and maintain what they have as a country. But what I wanted to say was this. Let's go back and think about it. Why were the tariffs implemented on Canada, Mexico, and China initially? It was because of the fentanyl coming into the country and because of the Mexican government and Canadian government not doing what they could have done and know they should have done all along to secure the border.
Yes.
So it took a freaking wake-up call, okay, with these tariffs to get them to act. In fact, even before we implemented them today, okay, they had all this time and they've already started to react just on the word that the tariffs were coming. So my question to my Canadian and Mexican friends is, where have you been the last 4 years?
Zach, perfect way to end the show. I love it. Where have you been? Nowhere. Didn't I say Harry? Oh, I'm so sorry. Harry, you've perfect way to end the show, Harry. Absolutely perfect. Look, if Canada is spoiling for an economic fight, they'll get one. And I'm telling you, we're going to clean their clock. Don't start something you can't finish. Bye-bye.